The Verdict, a Sidebar production, hosted by Kent Meyers and Mick Cornett. As a part of its traditional and continuing commitment to public and community service, Crowe and Dunlevy sponsors The Verdict. Also sponsored by Delta Dental, Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, and C.H. Guernsey and Company. Each week on The Verdict, we present an objective discussion of contemporary and legal issues, topical issues that will affect Oklahomans in their daily lives. The Verdict, a Sidebar production.
And welcome to this special edition of The Verdict. Glad you're with us. I'm Mick Cornett, along with Kent Meyers. And Kent, another debate.
Another debate. It's 2 weeks till primary time, and we think our viewers are very interested in what's going on in some of these primary races. And we had a really good response to the West Lane Mickey Holmesy debate, and we think we'll get every bit as good a response to this. This is for the 4th Congressional District. We have two of the leading Republican candidates for the 4th Congressional District seat. And I want to take this minute, Mick, to ask you, please, to tell us who the other candidates are besides the two that we have with us today.
The Republicans on the ballot, Terry Johnson, Jerry Black, Garland Newton, and Tenny Rogers. For Democrats on the ballot, Lance Compton, Ben Odom, Darrell Roberts, and Brandon Claves.
I want to now introduce the two gentlemen we have with us, and we're very pleased that both of them are here. On my right is Mr. Tom Cole. Tom graduated from Grinnell College, Yale University, and obtained his Ph.D. from the University of Oklahoma. He was elected to the Oklahoma State Senate from the Moore, Oklahoma District generally. He was the first Republican Oklahoma Secretary of State. Nationally, Tom has been Executive Director of the National Republican Congressional Committee. He's been Chief of Staff of the Republican National Committee and a member of the Bush-Cheney Transition Advisory Committee. He is President of Cole, Hargrave, Snodgrass and Associates, a political consulting firm, an enrolled member of the Chickasaw tribe, married and has one son. Tom, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Kent. Appreciate it.
Across the table is Marc Nuttle. Mark is a resident of Norman for over 30 years, obtained 2 degrees from the University of Oklahoma, including his law degree, has served on numerous boards and agencies across the state. Nationally, he also was Executive Director of the National Republican Congressional Committee. He served in leadership positions in the President Reagan transition team and served with Presidents Bush and Bush in their campaign. Has served as Vice President of the National Federation of Independent Business, and more recently was one of the leaders of the successful Right to Work campaign in Oklahoma. Mark is married and has 2 daughters. Mark, thank you for joining us on The Verdict.
Glad to be here.
We're really glad to have these guys today, Mick.
We'll start with opening statements. You'll have 2 minutes each. Mr. Cole, why don't you go first?
Thank you very much, Mick. First, I want to thank the people of The Verdict for making this possible, giving us the opportunity to bring our views before the public. Also, Crowe and Dunlevy for sponsoring this show and giving us an opportunity to hit the airwaves. And finally, the voters and the people that are listening for taking the time. As I look at this race, if I were a voter, I would be asking myself 3 questions about the candidates. First, I'd want to know what their background was. I've lived in this district since 1960. The family's actually lived inside the current boundaries of the district since the 1840s when they came out here as Chickasaws, and the rest of the family came a little bit later. Graduated from Moore High School, went on, eventually got my doctorate at the University of Oklahoma, operated a small business in Moore, employs about 50 people. Obviously, next question would be, well, what are your qualifications? And I've served in the state senate and served as Secretary of State. I think as such have worked in the political process, not just in the campaign sense, but in terms of coming to grips with the tough issues, arriving at solutions. The next question I would ask are, what are your values? What are the things you're going to fight for? I'm a conservative. I believe in less government, lower taxes, very passionately believe in traditional values, believe in a strong national defense, and certainly believe in a firm foreign policy. And finally, I suppose I would try to judge the candidates in terms of their intensity and their passion for the job. And I want to assure you that if I'm fortunate enough to be the Republican nominee and ultimately the congressman, I'll get up earlier, I'll stay up later, and I'll work harder in between for the interests of the 4th District and for the values of the people of the 4th District.
About 30 seconds.
Than anybody else. And I would ask each and every person that's taken the time to join in and listen this morning, please, please, please families go to the polls and vote on August 27th, and then later in the process in November. Would appreciate your support.
All right, Mr. Cole, thank you. Mr. Nuttle, your shot, 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Well, first, I too want to thank the sponsors here for giving us this opportunity to address these issues, and Crowe and Dunlevy for your 100th year anniversary. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I've been there every year.
Well, it's a great service, and thank you, and thank you both. I think that what the people of the 4th District want to know is what is our vision for the future to make this a better district for our families. First, I believe that it is important that we understand to take care of what we have. And the small businesses and the small towns and the small farms in this district are important to the future of our families. How are we going to keep our children here so they have jobs, don't move out of the state? How are we going to keep from losing another congressional district in the next 10 years? Now, what are my thoughts on that? I have represented small business nationally. I know that in other states it's not as important as it is to Oklahoma. 93% of all businesses in this district have 20 employees or less. It is the main engine for the creation of jobs. Further, what are we going to do to maintain what we have? Well, we have military installations that in this district that must be maintained. We have Tinker Air Force Base, which is critical not only to the economy of the district, but also to the future of the security of the country. And a military post at Fort Sill that needs to be expanded because of its location and for security reasons, but also because the people of Oklahoma want these military installations, and it is part of our culture and part of our district.
About 30 seconds.
Further, education is important, and that we have local control of schools, and that the local curriculum is addressed here in this state. And then lastly, our faith. Being able to exercise our faith as we see fit without the intervention of government, being able to do for our families as we see fit without any intervention of making those decisions for ourselves and our children's future so they can have the same opportunity that we had.
Thank you both for your opening statements. You're watching a special edition of The Verdict, a debate between two of the Republican candidates, Mr. Tom Cole and Mr. Marc Nuttle. We'll be right back.
Very good, guys.
And Blankenship has stopped at the line of scrimmage. No gain on the play. Leaving it 4th and 7 on the Tiger 46-yard line. 38 seconds on the clock. The Tigers have no choice but to go for it. Wiggins had to do the kicking. Here's the snap. And the kick is away.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all of the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. Oklahoma Lawyers for Children has over 350 of the best attorneys and volunteers in Oklahoma County who donate their time and services to represent children. For more information, call 405-23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
St. Gregory's University has been changing the lives of people like me for 125 years. Affordable, private Catholic education, balanced with dedication to community and service, makes St. Gregory special. We're extremely proud of our students' outstanding academic achievements and our nationally ranked athletic teams. It's when you help a student build a future of balance, integrity, and service that you change a life forever. St. Gregory's, a community for life.
And welcome back to this special edition of The Verdict, a debate between two Republican congressional candidates for Oklahoma House District 4, Marc Nuttle and Tom Cole. And it's time for some questions and answers, Kent.
Yes, we're going to be asking the candidates some questions and give them a chance to answer. And on this debate, we're going to give the other candidate just a minute or two or a second or two to respond to the answer as given or say whatever they'd like to say about that particular question. I want to start off with a question for Mr. Cole. Mr. Cole, you have worked in both for Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush in the Bush-Cheney transition team. Elgin, Oklahoma, of course, is in this district, and Elgin was disappointed with the cancellation of the Crusader artillery weapon as mandated by the Secretary of Defense and the President. If you'd been in Congress, would the decision have been different, and should the Crusader be scrapped?
Well, I think the Oklahoma delegation, really both senators and the entire congressional delegation, did everything they could to make sure that decision didn't happen. So I think it'd be presumptuous for any of us to say we could have trumped Senator Nichols, Inhofe, and Congressman Watts. I wouldn't make that claim. I think it is a bad decision, quite frankly. Even Secretary Rumsfeld admitted this is an excellent weapon system. It's the next logical follow-on system to the Paladin system that we have now. And I think canceling it was bad enough, but not having a replacement ready. They just want to, quote, do something different. So I think that was poor policy. Having said that, I think the appropriate thing now is to get a follow-on weapon system for the Paladin system. I think that can happen. And I think it can happen within the time frame of 2008, 2010, when the Crusader was supposed to go on. As Congressman Watts is fond of saying, I don't care if they call it Shep the Pup. As long as it's a field artillery system, they can get the job done and protect American soldiers in the field, then I'm for it. And I think we can do that. The technology is available. And frankly, I think Elgin would have a great shot with the same kind of technology of still getting those jobs. But it's something that certainly I'd work hard to do.
There are 2 points critical to the debate. One is that we need another artillery system to replace the Paladin system that we now are using. It's my understanding there are at least 2 countries in the world that have better howitzer systems than we have, and that's just not acceptable. Our men and women in arms and in our forces need to have the best weapons possible. That's number one. Number 2, Fort Sill needs more personnel. It's equipped for that. It's built for that. It needs to be expanded. The next thing that needs to happen to that base is that we proceed to pursue a new brigade. The military is designing 2 new brigades by 2006, and one of those brigades should be stationed at Fort Sill.
Thank you. Let's now direct a question, Mr. Nuttle, to you. In some of your material, I've noticed that you've said that you're the only candidate in the race with significant foreign policy experience. Let's talk about Iraq and Saddam Hussein. Much clamor to depose him, much clamor to invade Iraq. If you were elected, what would you suggest to the President if Congress does not approve invading Iraq, and more generally, what should we do with Iraq?
Well, let me answer the question directly and then give you some backup. It's my understanding that in those caves in Afghanistan that they found sophisticated plans for terrorist attacks in the United States that were biological in nature. The National Security Agency has determined that there are only 2 countries that can provide the mechanisms and components for those attacks, Iran and Iraq. And it appears that Iraq is developing weapons of mass destruction. If the President of the United States has information that an attack is imminent, then he should have the authority and he should attack. I mean, the risking 500,000 American lives for any political or policy purpose otherwise is unacceptable, and he should be taken out. So given the information, and if that's what the case is, and keeping us apprised of the information, that's what should occur. Now, what happens then behind that? I have done work in Asia. I have done work in the Middle East for governments in those areas. Also in Europe and in Eastern Bloc countries, and did some work for Boris Yeltsin at one time. Those are all client states in the area. And how we react to Iraq or anything in the Middle East, there's repercussions out to bigger powers like China and Russia that must be considered. But the national security of the United States is paramount to any world policy decision, and the people of the United States must be protected.
Thank you. Mr. Cole?
Well, I don't think there's any question that the President comes in and asks to have the authority to attack Iraq. He ought to have that. I believe very strongly Congress ought to have a role in that, ought to cast a vote. I think if he goes and requests that authority, I think most congressional members, quite frankly, will, even the ones that have doubts, will probably support him. I think we are extraordinarily fortunate at this time in history to have George W. Bush as president and to have the team around him that he put in place: Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, Don Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney. It's probably the best foreign policy team any president has ever assembled. So I have a high degree of confidence in them. In terms of dealing with Saddam Hussein, I don't think there's any question that he's a serious threat to the security of the United States, and if the president feels that we need to take him out, we ought to do that.
Mr. Cole, this question is for you. It deals with prayer in school and the moment of silence that is now taking place this semester in Oklahoma schools across our state. What's your view on that issue?
I'm very supportive of that. I applaud the legislature for taking a step in that direction. I don't think there's any question that faith is an integral part of the value structure of this country, and certainly our founding fathers expected there not to be a church and state relationship, but that there be a religious element in our public and civic life. Democracy doesn't exist without self-restraint and faith. So I applaud the legislature for doing that. I would like to see them go further and assure that individuals, frankly, could use school facilities before and after hours for legitimate religious instruction and religious purposes. You know, we're going to send our kids to school for a lot of time every day. We're not just going to learn academic things. Values are going to be shaped there as well, and I think we ought to have the opportunity for the right type of values to occur in those places.
Mr. Nuttle?
Well, I agree. I'm for prayer in school. I believe that this is a step in the right direction. We had to be so vigilant on those in Congress who want to infringe upon our constitutional rights of free speech or our rights to pursue our faith. Dick Gephardt, about 18 months ago, introduced a piece of legislation to amend the First Amendment right of free speech to exclude political speech to be regulated by Congress. I don't know if I'm more outraged that he thought of it or they actually introduced it into legislation. They have it debated and voted upon. This is a step in the right direction. It should be. We should pursue it and take it to the next step.
All right, it is time for a break. You're watching a special edition of The Verdict, a debate between two congressional candidates for Republican District 4. We'll be right back.
We are C.H. Guernsey & Company. We provide engineering, architecture, and consulting services to clients across the nation and around the world. Our corporate headquarters are located in Oklahoma City, and we have branch offices across the country, including Tulsa. We have provided quality service to clients for nearly 75 years. At Guernsey, we believe in quality work and unconditional client satisfaction. To learn more about C.H. Guernsey & Company, log on to our website at chguernsey.com.
We're pleased today to have as our guest Lisa McAllister. Lisa is a secretary in the Oklahoma City office and has been with the firm of Crowe and Dunlevy for 9 years. Lisa, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ken.
We have asked you here today because of your activities with the Race for the Cure. Tell our viewers just briefly, what is the Race for the Cure and why is there a Race for the Cure?
Well, the Race for the Cure was founded in 1982. It's called the Susan G. Komen Race for the Cure. Susan G. Komen is a woman that lost her life to breast cancer at the age of 36. Her sister Nancy Branker started the foundation.
And it raises money for cancer research, I take it?
That's correct, for breast cancer research, screening, education.
Well, now, you've been with the firm for a number of years. How did you get involved with Race for the Cure?
Ken, I'm a breast cancer survivor of a little over 4 years, and that's how I became involved with the Race for the Cure. I thought it was important to give back because I've been so fortunate.
Well, what did you do to support Race for the Cure, particularly within the firm?
What I do within the firm is I coordinate putting together the Crowe and Dunlevy race team and assigning up our participants and collecting money from sponsors around the firm to help.
What size race team did the Oklahoma City office for Crowe and Dunlevy enter this year?
Well, we had over 50 Crowe and Dunlevy participants.
Runners?
On our team, runners on our team.
And raised substantial sums of money, I suppose.
That's correct.
How does that 50 or 50-plus numbers compare with what the firm has done in the past?
We do, this year was our biggest team, and every year our team just seems to grow and grow.
And you're kind of in charge of getting that done?
That's correct.
Well, just in the few seconds we have remaining, why is it, Lisa, that Race for the Cure is important? What would you like our viewers to know about that?
Well, when a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer, it's important that she not walk alone. It takes a team effort to raise the funds, to put towards research, screening, testing, and just community awareness of breast cancer.
Lisa, thank you so much for talking about Race for the Cure. We're really pleased to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Mick Cornett and Kent Meyers back with special guest on a special edition of The Verdict. Typically, you'll see us here on Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock discussing legal and political issues pertinent to Oklahoma. But in this telecast, we're hosting a debate between two Republican congressional candidates for Oklahoma House District 4, Tom Cole and Marc Nuttle. And we will continue with questions and answers. Ken?
Yes, a little shorter questions, I hope, and a little shorter answers and responses, perhaps. Let me ask Mr. Nuttle a question. You have endorsements from a number of people, actually quite a few listed on your website, including Labor Commissioner Brenda Renault Wynn and Norman Mayor Ron Henderson. Your opponent has endorsements from Governor Frank Keating, outgoing Congressman J.C. Watts, and others. In this race, or in any race, just how important are endorsements?
Well, it's a component of communication to the electorate. One of the things that we both mentioned in our opening statements is that are we one of you? And the coalition, this will be a coalition campaign, this district is registered Democrat. In how we relate to each element of the coalition, those endorsements are important, but they're not paramount or dominant. I have small business endorsements. I have people of faith endorsements. I have the Right to Work coalition endorsements. I have party officials who have endorsed me. On the national level, I just received the other day the endorsement of Milton Friedman, a national economist, which kind of tells you a little bit about me, that I'm a conservative, that I have a conservative background, that I've been involved in the Reagan movement, and that I'm involved with people in the district just like they are. And I think it's important for those reasons because, guys, what it all comes down to is personal relationships. How well do we know each other and how well do we relate to each other?
Mr. Cole, your response?
Well, I think clearly endorsements are useful. They give, you have a known quantity that can vouch for an unknown quantity. And philosophically, if you like J.C. Watts and you like Frank Keating, then you're probably going to like where I come from in terms of how I vote and how I conduct myself in office. But I think in the end, you win Republican primaries one household at a time, one vote at a time. And an endorsement gets you in the door, but it doesn't make the sale for you. In the end, you have to be able to articulate the things that you believe, be willing to address the issues that concern the voters, and frankly, run the kind of campaign that makes the voters comfortable being on your side.
Okay.
Let me direct now a question to Mr. Cole. You are an enrolled member of the Chickasaw tribe.
Proud of it.
And Indian tribes have increased their gaming activities in Oklahoma considerably in the last decade. Should that be expanded to full Las Vegas type gaming, and if so, why? If not, why not?
Well, it shouldn't be. Frankly, state law regulates what Indian tribes can do. Tribes can do what is legal inside a particular state. I would much prefer that, frankly, we have no gaming activity. I'll just be honest with you. That's not an area that I think is productive economically. I've been a strong opponent of the lottery and of casino-type gaming when it's been on the ballot in Oklahoma. I think it's much more productive if you're a tribe to invest in things like a bank and things like industrial buildings. Chickasaws actually own a bank and have a large free enterprise component. So I would rather encourage that than see an expansion of gaming.
Mr. Nuttle?
I believe that the tribes, all the tribes in Oklahoma, are critical to the state, not just economically, but to our society, our history, and our culture. But we don't want them isolated from our system. I don't want a system where they're taxed differently and they pay taxes differently, and then we get into a division in society on whether or not people outside of the tribes are paying for services to service the tribes' different facilities, and they're not paying enough or not paying tax. You get into that type of competition. In some states on the East Coast, it is a vociferous debate. We don't want to get into that.
Mr. Nuttle, a question for you. You have a radio ad that indicates, quote, you have fought for the rights of the unborn. What is your position on abortion and specifically Roe versus Wade?
Well, I am for, I am right to life. And my position is basically this. In this country today, we do not want abortion to become birth control. So my definition is that I believe life begins at conception, and that unless there's some intervening event, that fetus will become a full-functioning human being. It is a living, breathing soul. You get in a debate when, where, and how it becomes a soul, but if you don't have an intervening event, it will, in that mother's womb, become a person. Therefore, you have to look at it, when do you terminate? Well, biblically, the only standard for termination is self-defense. And in self-defense, the mother's right to life is also at stake.
And a half-minute for a response.
Well, frankly, our opinions on this are, I suspect, identical. I'm a very strong defender of the right to life of the unborn. I voted that way when I was in the state Senate, had a 100% voting record among Oklahomans for life, and would expect to continue to be very strong in defense of the unborn in Congress.
Well, let me jump in and get us to a break. You're watching a debate between two Republican congressional candidates, District 4, Mr. Tom Cole, Mr. Marc Nuttle. Kent Meyers are joining us, and we'll be right back.
American Express Tax and Business Services. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. American Express Tax and Business Services. In Oklahoma City, the phone number is 405-843-5311.
Every day, in state governments throughout the country, crucial decisions are being made that affect the lives of children and their families. But as this process takes place, children are often left voiceless. When these children raise their hands to be heard, is anyone listening? There are people listening. They are child advocates. Join us and raise your hand for kids.
And welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. We're wrapping up the first half of our debate, which viewers will be able to see in its entirety tomorrow night.
Yes, we'll be on from 7 to 8 p.m. On this station with the whole hour-long debate. These two gentlemen that have appeared and are going to appear are both quite intelligent, both quite gentlemanly, both quite well-informed and well-connected. It will be interesting to see how the voters of the 4th Congressional District sort this out, because they really have some pretty good choices here.
Next Sunday, the second half of our debate, but again, tomorrow night, 7 o'clock right here on KSBI, an opportunity to see the entire debate in its entirety. We'll be back next Sunday. If you miss us tomorrow night, for Kent Meyers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next time on The Verdict.